Did Nolan Wells' family not turn over his cell phone to the police? The lawyer for one of Nolan's friends just made that accusation on Dan Abrams' Sirius show, and we're going to bring on Dan to give his take on that and the latest on this case. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. What a statement on the Nolan Wells case, right? Did Nolan Wells' family not turn over his phone to authorities? Now, I got to explain where this allegation is coming from because it just happened on Dan Abrams' Sirius show, and we're going to bring Dan on. But Nolan Wells, of course, is the 18-year-old college football player who died after a July 4th boating trip to this barrier island known as Horn Island out in Mississippi. His body was found on July 6th. His family is demanding answers. They are demanding a thorough and complete investigation. They have hired their own attorney, Ben Crump, to conduct an independent investigation as authorities, namely the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, conduct their own investigation. The results of the state official autopsy toxicology report, they have not been released. The case is expected to go to a grand jury under Mississippi law for potential criminal charges. Only after that could we expect to see the autopsy report, the toxicology report. But look, we don't even know for sure how Nolan died. We don't know the circumstances of his death. We don't know.
The lawyer for one of the friends just made that accusation on a national radio program. Did Nolan Wells' family not turn over his cell phone to the police? That question is not speculation. That question comes from an attorney representing the very friends who were with Nolan on the day he disappeared. And if that accusation is true, it changes everything. Before we go deeper into what the documents actually show, make sure you're subscribed to Crime Files 911, because we don't just cover the story, we follow the evidence. Picture a cell phone, not a piece of plastic and glass. Picture a sealed evidence bag containing the final digital footprint of an 18-year-old who vanished on a barrier island. Now picture that bag sitting in a drawer, not because the police seized it, not because a warrant was executed, but because the family holding that phone was asked to hand it over, and according to a sworn attorney, they did not. Think of that phone as a locked door, not a door with a key. A door that was simply never opened because the person standing in front of it chose not to turn the handle. That is the visual anchor. That is the image that must not be forgotten. The official narrative is built on unknowns. Nolan Wells, an 18-year-old college football player, died after a July 4th boating trip to Horn Island, Mississippi. His body was found on July 6th. The Jackson County Sheriff's Office initially said there was no foul play. The family demanded answers. They hired attorney Ben Crump to conduct an independent investigation. The friends who were with Nolan that day, Warren Hudson, Jax Padalo, and Morgan Seymour, hired their own lawyers.
About to play you from SiriusXM, which is shocking, if true. We reported the other day that Nolan's friends, who apparently were with him that day, have hired lawyers. So we're talking about Warren Hudson, Jax Padalo, Morgan Seymour, and that according to TMZ, Hudson and Padalo took their lawyers, J. Tyler Cox and Edward Andrew Paltzik, back to Horn Island. So it seems they may be conducting their own independent investigation. And this seems to be in light of reported threats that they've been receiving. There's been kind of the rumblings they may file their own kind of defamation actions against people who have been spreading what they claim is misinformation about them online. So they go to this island, maybe get a better understanding of the island's layout, the dynamics. And to be clear, when I talk about potential litigation, there has been online speculation that they were somehow involved in what happened to Nolan. To be clear, there is nothing that we have seen released by authorities to verify that in any way. They deny any allegations. Also, Seymour, Hudson, and Padalo, they appeared on the Officer Tatum show, hosted by...
The state autopsy and toxicology reports have not been released. The case is expected to go to a grand jury, and under Mississippi law, only after that process could the autopsy report become public. But behind this official narrative lies a single question that reframes everything. That question came from a caller named Mo on the Dan Abrams show.
When a caller named Mo asked about Nolan's phone. Now, let me remind everybody about this, about Nolan's phone for a second. Nolan's mom previously reportedly claimed that when the family got Nolan's phone back, seemingly from his friends, that she actually tracked the phone down using a Life 360 app, she reportedly claimed that there were no pictures or videos on these Snapchat accounts that Nolan had. So it was a concern that was information deleted. And you couple that with the report that Nolan's family had issued subpoenas to companies like Snapchat and WhatsApp and TikTok and Meta and Life 360, potentially as part of upcoming litigation. This is according to court documents that were obtained by the Sun Herald reporting.
Mo asked the attorneys for Nolan's friends whether messages were missing from Nolan's phone. And then the attorney, Tyler Cox, made a statement that sent shockwaves through this investigation. He said, and this is a direct quote from the program,
So let me ask you this. I saw a headline a few weeks back that said Ben Crump and the family is going to allow the Jackson County Sheriff's Office access to Nolan's phone. You know what I never heard? I never heard him follow through with that. I have reason to believe, and I do believe, that they have not cooperated with law enforcement. I do not think that they have turned in Nolan's phone. And I'm willing to bet my reputation on that. I don't think they've cooperated at all. They do not have Nolan's phone. They haven't had access to Nolan's phone. The Jackson County Sheriff's Department has it. So how can you say that there's text missing or there's photographs missing? Our boys had no reason to do anything with Nolan's phone other than give it back to Christine and her friends later that night. So anything about missing text messages or Snapchats is completely false.
I have reason to believe, and I do believe, that they have not cooperated with law enforcement. I do not think that they have turned in Nolan's phone. And I'm willing to bet my reputation on it. The evidence was on the phone. That phrase is not hyperbole. It is the functional reality of what this accusation describes. Because consider the timeline. Nolan's mother, Christine Wellesley, had previously stated that when the family got Nolan's phone back from his friends, she tracked it using a Life 360 app. She reportedly claimed there were no pictures or videos on Nolan's Snapchat accounts. There was concern that information had been deleted. The family had issued subpoenas to companies like Snapchat, WhatsApp, TikTok, Meta, and Life 360. According to court documents obtained by the Sun Herald and reported by the New York Post, this was part of upcoming litigation. Ben Crump had indicated that his team and authorities would do a mutual inspection of the phone. He said their own former law enforcement experts would help with the cell phone download so everybody could see at the same time what the phone contained. But then the accusation landed, and it was not subtle. The attorney for the friends doubled down. He said, and this is also a direct quote, "I'm willing to bet my reputation on it. I don't think they've cooperated at all. They do not have Nolan's phone. They haven't had access to Nolan's phone. The Jackson County Sheriff's Department has it." Let's pause on that. The friend's attorney is not saying the family is withholding the phone from the public. He is saying they are withholding it from law enforcement. He is saying the family is not cooperating. And he is saying this on national radio with his reputation on the line. Dan Abrams, the host of the program and founder of Law and Crime, responded with a measured but pointed observation.
I mean, I was stunned when they said it, right? I mean, when I invited them on the show, I didn't really think they were going to break news. I thought they were going to more talk about the defamation lawsuits that they were talking about, et cetera. But when he said that, I sort of paused and I was like, whoa, wait a second. He's accusing them of withholding evidence from the investigation. And sort of that's what everyone is calling for, right? Which is everyone saying, let the investigation proceed. Let's see what the investigation turns up. And you gotta hope that the family is going to be willing to turn over the phone as part of that investigation.
Look, you've covered cases for such a long time. I have never heard of a mutual inspection of a cell phone that could potentially be a crucial piece of evidence in this case, where their own experts and police are going to somehow simultaneously look at the phone.
He said, and this is a direct quote, he's accusing them of withholding evidence from the investigation. And then Abrams added, you gotta hope that the family is gonna be willing to turn over the phone as part of that investigation. The question is not whether the phone contains evidence. The question is why anyone would refuse to turn it over if they truly wanted answers. The family's public position has been clear. They want a thorough and complete investigation. They have questioned the sheriff's office. They have demanded transparency. But if the phone is the single most important piece of digital evidence in this case, and the family is holding it while law enforcement does not have it, the irony is deafening. The evidence was on the phone. Now, the legal mechanics matter here. Police could obtain a warrant for the phone. But Dan Abrams noted something critical. He said, and this is a direct quote, I would think they probably don't have to turn it over.
Could even be possible.
Well, I mean, look, I would think they probably don't have to turn it over. Remember, from the police perspective, they start this by saying, we don't think there's foul play, but we're certainly going to investigate, right? They're not investigating any wrongdoing by the family of Nolan Wells. They're not investigating any wrongdoing by Nolan Wells himself. So the question of, do they get a warrant? I guess they could, but I don't know that if it's true, I don't know that the authorities really want to be at odds right, with the family, because in theory, it is the family calling for the authorities to do a thorough investigation. And if they're not helping in that, then obviously that's a problem. Now, maybe they're going to take the position that, they don't think that the authorities are, doing a good or thorough or fair investigation. I don't know. We really need to talk to them about that to determine, what their position is.
Remember, from the police perspective, they start this by saying, "We don't think there's foul play, but we're certainly going to investigate." They're not investigating any wrongdoing by the family of Nolan Wells. They're not investigating any wrongdoing by Nolan Wells himself. So the question of, do they get a warrant? I guess they could, but I don't know that the authorities really want to be at odds with the family. That is the heart of the problem. The family is the aggrieved party. The family is the one demanding accountability. And yet, if the accusation is true, the family is the one holding back the very tool that could provide answers. The friends, meanwhile, have lawyered up, but they have also gone public. They appeared on the Brandon Tatum show. They returned to Horn Island with their attorneys to understand the landscape. They have called Nolan their brother. Warren Hudson said, and this is a direct quote, "I wish we would have never went out." They have denied any wrongdoing. Their attorneys are threatening defamation lawsuits against those spreading misinformation online. Their attorney told Dan Abrams, "Do you think we'd be so crazy as to put our clients out there if we thought that they had anything potentially incriminating to say?"
That's exactly what their lawyer said. I mean, their lawyer specifically said to me, "Do you think we'd be so crazy as to put our clients out there if we thought that they had anything potentially incriminating to say?" And, look, you do need to look at this, I think, this case from the kind of the big picture, which is, what is the evidence? And I always say this about...
Dan Abrams made a sharp observation about this dynamic. He noted that typically in high-profile investigations, inconsistencies emerge. People's stories shift. The evidence doesn't line up. But in this case, he said, and this is a direct quote, "Their story, in my view, does kind of make sense."
Yeah, people are saying, well, I have questions about the call that they made for help. I have questions about why Nolan's phone was on the boat. Okay, that's great to have questions. But that's not the same thing as saying, wait a second here. This story doesn't make sense. The problem, with where we are today is their story, in my view, does kind of make sense, right? And so there has to be something else, because let's even assume the very worst case scenario as far as I'm concerned.
He laid out a scenario even if there was a fight and the friends left Nolan on the island. That is not murder.
Which is that there was some sort of fight between Nolan and his friends. They say that didn't happen, but let's even assume that happened, and they left him on the island. Okay, that's not murder. That's not manslaughter, right? This island is an island where people are constantly going on other people's boats to leave. It's not just like, oh my goodness, if you don't get back on your boat, you'll never get out. So even if that happened, it would be bad, right? But I kind of feel like we'd know about it already. Meaning there were so many different people who were involved in this group. There would be, 3 people saying, yeah, those 2 guys didn't want to let him back on the boat. And we haven't heard that. So I just think that, and I think these lawyers are right to say,
that is not manslaughter. People leave Horn Island on other people's boats all the time. And if that had happened, he said, would know about it already. There would be 3 people saying, yeah, those 2 guys didn't want to let him back on the boat. And we haven't heard that. Here is the ticking clock moment. If the grand jury returns no criminal charges, if the autopsy shows an accidental drowning, and if the phone is never examined, what is left? Because the public will not accept that. The family will not accept that. Dan Abrams said, and this is a direct quote, no way. No way it's going to be the end of the story. He noted that medical examiner reports are often ambiguous. There are different ways to interpret them. And in this case, because of the racial angle, Nolan was black. His friends were white. The investigation will be scrutinized like no other.
Some facts and evidence, right? We don't get into the conspiracy theory rabbit holes unless they've got some evidence behind them, right? I mean, I'm game to go down any rabbit hole where you show me evidence. But when you say to me, oh, because there have been two medical examiners who've examined the body. Oh, well, in between the time of the first medical examiner and the second medical examiner, there were parts of the body that appeared maybe were missing. And that's what happens, right, with medical examiners. And what I'm afraid of is that that's going to just turn into conspiracy theories that are not evidence, that are not facts. And I think it's really, really important, and I think you've been doing a really good job of this, is that we always sort of bring it back to that. We bring it back to, whoa, let's not go off on crazy rabbit holes unless we got some facts or evidence behind it.
And that's why I think when Ben Crump held that press conference about the autopsy, it would have been great if a medical examiner actually gave that report as opposed to Ben Crump, even though he tried to temper it, about missing body parts. I heard a gasp in the audience, but like you said, that's usually standard. But listen.
Ben Crump has already framed this as one of many cases involving Black teens in Mississippi where investigations were not thorough enough. The scrutiny is not going away, but the evidence, as it stands, is not pointing at the friends. It is pointing at a gap. The phone is the gap. The phone is the piece of evidence that could confirm or deny everything. The phone is the piece of evidence that could show whether messages were deleted, whether photos were taken, whether Nolan communicated with anyone after his friends left the island. And yet, as of this recording, the Jackson County Sheriff's Department does not have it. According to the friend's attorney, the family has not turned it over. Ben Crump has not responded publicly to that accusation. The mutual inspection he proposed has not materialized. The friend's attorney was asked about messages missing from Nolan's phone. He responded, and this is a direct quote, "Our boys had no reason to do anything with Nolan's phone other than give it back to Christine and her friends later that night. So anything about missing text messages or Snapchats is completely false." But he did not say the phone was not wiped. He said his clients did not do it. That is a distinction. And that distinction matters. The evidence was on the phone. The system was designed for this. The subpoenas were issued. The investigations were launched. The lawyers were hired. The grand jury was convened. But if the phone is not examined, none of it matters. The family has demanded answers. The friends have denied wrongdoing. The sheriff's office has said no foul play. But the unanswered question, the one that must remain with you after this video ends, is this: if the family truly wanted answers, why would they not hand over the phone? And if they did hand it over, why does the friend's attorney, with his reputation on the line, say they did not? We close with a call to research. The court documents in this case are public. The subpoenas issued by the family to Snapchat, WhatsApp, TikTok, Meta, and Life 360 were obtained by the Sun Herald and reported on by the New York Post. The transcript of the Dan Abrams Show segment where Tyler Cox made his accusation is available. We direct you to one specific document, the Sun Herald's reporting on the subpoenas, dated July 2026. Read it and then ask yourself one question. If Nolan's phone held the answers his family is demanding, what does it mean that the phone was never turned over? Who bears responsibility? The friends, the family, or the system that never asked the question?